Karen sent fake cops to my ranch. Didn't know I'm the county sheriff. They came at dusk. 3 of them. No sirens, no headlights. Just a tan SUV kicking up dust as it barreled down the dirt road leading to my ranch. I was on the porch with my dog, Buck, nursing a coffee and watching the sun dip low behind the barn. When the tires screeched to a halt and the doors flew open, I knew right away something was off. No local officer rolls up like that without calling first. No deputy from Jackson County wears a badge that flimsy or a uniform that color. And no cop points a gun at a man standing calmly with a mug in one hand and a sheriff's badge on his belt. But that's what the tallest one did. Hands up, he barked. Buck growled low, his muscles tensing. I didn't move. You sure you want to do this? I asked, real slow. He hesitated, just enough for me to know he was bluffing. That's when she stepped out of the passenger seat of a blue Mazda behind them. Karen Lancaster, HOA president, hair too blonde to be natural, lips curled in that smug, HOA queen kind of way. She stood there like she just orchestrated a symphony. You see, she said, loud and proud. He's threatening me. Arrest him. I laughed. I actually laughed. It just came out a dry, surprised chuckle. Karen, I said, these boys aren't cops. She blinked. Of course they are. No, I said, but I am. Let me back up. I wasn't always sheriff. 22 years in the Marines taught me how to spot a con from a mile away. After I retired, I came home to Jackson County and started a quiet life. Built my own place out near the Pines, 10 acres, a stable, and a view worth dying for. Then came the HOA, or rather, Karen. She'd been voted in as president of a fake HOA 2 years before I moved in. A group of 5 self-important busybodies decided to preserve the integrity of the subdivision, even though it was mostly farmland and private lots. No one signed any real contract. There were no bylaws filed with the county, but Karen printed out pamphlets and strutted around like she was the mayor. She hated my place the moment I put up the split rail fence, said it ruined the neighborhood aesthetic, claimed my barn was too large, that my truck was too loud, that Buck barked at night. But none of that was her business. Still, she'd file complaints every week. I never responded, never needed to, because the thing about real authority is, it doesn't need to scream. The trouble started 3 weeks ago. I just built a new shed out back, nothing fancy, just a steel structure with climate control and reinforced locks. That shed held more than tools. It stored tactical gear, communications equipment, firearms, and encrypted documents I still maintain from my federal consulting gigs. Karen saw the black satellite dish on the roof and freaked. "Are you building a spy station?" she yelled from the edge of the property. I didn't answer. The next day, she put a fake HOA notice on my gate. Unauthorized construction, demolish within 72 hours or face legal action. I called it what it was, bull. Ripped it down, ignored it. That was my mistake, because Karen wasn't used to being ignored. The following weekend, my niece came to visit. She's 14, sweet kid, sharp as a tack. We were walking the back trails when a white SUV started tailing us down the gravel path. No plates, dark windows. I stepped in front of her and told the driver to back off. He didn't. That was my first clue that Karen had escalated things beyond letters and passive aggression. But I didn't expect what came next. 3 men, matching boots, matching holsters, one with a badge that looked like it came from a Halloween store. They showed up yesterday afternoon with a warrant. Only, it wasn't signed by anyone in my office. I checked. The name scribbled at the bottom was Deputy Chief R. Stevens, a man who doesn't exist. And yet, they acted like they had power. Karen strutted behind them, shouting, "I told you he was hiding something." I let them enter the property because I had cameras rolling. The moment one of them tried to cuff me, Buck lunged. I gave the command just in time, but the damage was done. I'd seen enough. This wasn't just HOA harassment. This was impersonating law enforcement on private land, and that's when I flipped the script. I tapped my belt mic. "Unit 5-1, this is Sheriff Merritt. I've got 3 suspects on my property impersonating officers. Roll units. Now, they froze. Karen blinked. One of the fake cops actually dropped his handcuffs. "You're the sheriff?" she asked. "County badge," I said, flashing it. "Real as it gets." She turned pale. What followed was chaos. My deputies arrived in force, guns drawn, vests on, commands flying. Karen tried to argue. The three imposters tried to run. One hid behind her car. Didn't work. The charges were real impersonation, unlawful detainment, trespassing on protected property. But the story was just getting started, because when I got a hold of Karen's emails, I uncovered something much bigger than I expected. The first night after the arrests, I sat on the porch with Buck curled up at my feet and the moon casting long shadows over the pines. I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut this wasn't over. Karen might have been humiliated, but people like her don't just vanish after being caught. They regroup, they get meaner, and this time, she wasn't acting alone. After booking the three imposters, Joshua Lang, Rylan Crow, and Dennis Blaine, I ran their IDs through the state database. All clean, no warrants, no priors, but the connections started to pop the moment I dug deeper. Joshua Lang was a security contractor, used to work out of Dallas, got fired last year for abuse of authority. Rylan was a washed-up private investigator who'd lost his license in Arizona. Dennis, a freelance enforcer who sold himself as a repossession agent. None of them had law enforcement credentials, but they all had something else: a shared client on paper. Karen Lancaster. She'd paid them through a shell company called Civic Integrity Solutions LLC, which, to no one's surprise, had no business license in Jackson County. I stared at the transaction logs the next morning in my office, steam rising from my black coffee. Karen had wired $4,750 to Lang's business account labeled Enforcement Retainer. That wasn't HOA business. That was a hit job. I drove into town that afternoon. The courthouse square was bustling like usual, kids running around the fountain, folks grabbing ice cream from Bartley's Creamery, and a handful of retirees playing dominoes under the old cottonwood. I parked near City Hall and walked straight into the county recorder's office. Martha, a kind old clerk who knew everyone by name, looked up from her desk. "Sheriff Merritt, you come to shut down that fake HOA mess?" I raised a brow. "What makes you say that?" "Because half the neighborhood's been in here complaining about Karen trying to fine them for everything from fence height to mailbox paint," she said. "And the thing is, there's no HOA on file." "Exactly," I said, and laid the problem out for her. We spent the next 2 hours pulling deeds, property covenants, and zoning records. What we found confirmed what I'd suspected for months: the so-called HOA had no legal standing. The original developer went bankrupt before recording any HOA covenants, and the land was zoned mixed residential agricultural. That meant all Karen's rules had no teeth. But here's where it got interesting. 10 properties had liens filed against them by an outside law firm, Wilkins and Trent LLP. The liens were tied to unpaid HOA dues Karen had made up. One family even had their bank account frozen after a fake court order was submitted. This wasn't a neighborhood squabble anymore. It was fraud on a damn big scale. By the time I got back to my ranch, I already had 2 deputies running background checks on Wilkins and Trent. One of the names jumped out: Barry Wilkins. Disbarred in Nevada, reappeared in Georgia under a new LLC. Karen had teamed up with crooks, and she'd been fleecing the entire subdivision under the illusion of order. I knew what I had to do. I pulled out my burner laptop and started compiling everything: the fake badge IDs, the forged court documents, the wire transfers, the lien filings, every scrap of Karen's HOA con. I labeled the file Operation Porchlight, and then I made a call. Not to the local news, not to a lawyer. I called Josie Tran. Josie was my former sergeant in the Marines, now a forensic auditor for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Tough as nails, sharper than a blade, and allergic to corruption. She picked up on the second ring. "Cole, hey, Tran, I need a second set of eyes. Might have a local scam going down in Jackson County. Fake HOA, real victims. Send me the file. You want the short version?" Does it end with people in cuffs if I get my way? Yeah, I'm in. By midnight, she had the whole file. By dawn, she called me back with one word. Rico. That hit hard. Wait, racketeering, I asked. Yup, Josie said. If Karen conspired with a fake lawyer and paid fake cops to enforce fraudulent collections, that's criminal enterprise. And it doesn't stop with her. She was right, because I'd started getting texts from neighbors, from quiet, scared folks who didn't want to go public but were ready to talk now that they saw Karen get cuffed on video and dragged off my property. They told me she threatened them with foreclosure, shamed them on community message boards, even got a local contractor blacklisted because his fence offended her sensibilities. One man, an Army vet named Ty, had lost $12,000 in legal fees fighting a made-up fine for military equipment visible from the street. What equipment his damn wheelchair lift. I held a meeting the next night in my barn. Nothing fancy, just a few bales of hay, some lemonade, and a whiteboard that read, HOA Truth Meeting. People came, quietly at first, then in waves. Veterans, teachers, parents, widows, all tired of Karen's tyranny. I told them everything about the fake cops, the forged documents, the shell companies, the phony liens. And when I said the word Rico, you could hear a pin drop. Then Ty stood up. She told me I was a disgrace to the neighborhood, he said, voice shaking. Because of my lift, because I served. Someone gasped. And right there, something shifted. You could feel it. Fear turned into anger, and anger turned into resolve. That night, we formed a plan. I wouldn't lead it. That had to come from them. But I would back it, with everything I had. We called it Operation Homefront. Within 72 hours, 18 residents signed affidavits. I submitted the entire file to the state attorney general. Josie escalated it to a GBI task force. A whistleblower inside Karen's fake law firm confirmed everything, including emails showing Karen planned to expand her model HOA enforcement strategy to 3 other counties. She wasn't just a busybody. She was trying to franchise fraud. 2 days later, I got a knock at the door. Karen, hair disheveled, face drawn. No camera crew this time. She stood on my porch like she still had a leg to stand on. I want a deal, she said. If I resign, will you drop the charges? I looked her dead in the eyes. I'm not the prosecutor. Karen. She swallowed hard. But you're the sheriff. Exactly, I said, which means I don't cut deals with criminals. Then I stepped back inside and closed the door. She was still there when the unmarked GBI van pulled up behind her. They came for her at 6:47 a.m. 3 unmarked government vehicles pulled up outside Karen Lancaster's beige 2-story home, nestled at the edge of Pine Hollow Estates. Her HOA office sign, still taped proudly to her mailbox, fluttered in the morning breeze as a GBI task force surrounded the house. Not a single siren, just boots, badges, and silence. I watched from across the street. Josie Tran stepped out first, clipboard in hand, flanked by 2 agents with body cams rolling. Karen answered the door still in her robe, hair twisted up, as if she hadn't slept. Her eyes locked on me standing by my cruiser, and for a second, just a second, she looked like she understood what was coming. But not the full weight of it. Not yet. Josie didn't say much. She didn't have to. The warrant was 38 pages long, covering everything from conspiracy to commit wire fraud, impersonating law enforcement, filing false liens, coercion, and elder abuse. Karen had claimed it was all about community standards, but her bank records told a different story. Nearly $180,000 in HOA dues had moved through her personal accounts in 2 years. None of it taxed, none of it accounted for. Her shell company had billed neighbors for violations ranging from garden gnomes to American flags. And worse, she'd used that money to hire fake legal services, fake security, and most damningly, create a digital record system that mimicked county records to intimidate residents into thinking they were being sanctioned by the government. It wasn't a neighborhood issue anymore. It was organized crime. I got the full breakdown back at the station. Josie sat across from me in the briefing room, tossing file folders like cards. "This one's the smoking gun," she said. Karen didn't act alone. She handed me an internal memo from Wilkins and Trent. Turns out, Barry Wilkins wasn't even his real name. He was born Bernard Trent Wilkins, same guy. Different states, multiple bar suspensions, and a trail of fraud going back 2 decades. But the twist, he wasn't just helping Karen. She was pitching him a statewide expansion model, targeting vulnerable subdivisions in rural Georgia with no official HOAs on record. Their plan was simple: create order, collect dues, enforce compliance, and profit. It was a neighborhood racketeering ring disguised as civic duty, and my ranch that was supposed to be their test case for enforcement. They didn't know they picked the wrong sheriff. Meanwhile, the town exploded. News broke within 12 hours. Every channel from Macon to Atlanta had the headline, "Fake HOA President Arrested in Statewide Fraud." Probe sheriff victim of attempted impersonation. Plot that video, Karen shouting, "Arrest him," as her fake cops drew weapons went viral. Within a day, it had 1.2 million views on YouTube and even got clipped into a TikTok remix. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters, lawyers, angry citizens from other counties. I even got a call from a retired federal judge in Savannah who'd once warned his own HOA that fake enforcement was the new suburban mafia. He told me he never thought it would go this far. Neither did I. But the media frenzy wasn't what kept me up that night. It was Ty, the vet with the wheelchair lift Karen tried to find. He came by the ranch that evening, stood under the porch light, quiet as a ghost, holding a folded American flag in his hands. "She threw this in the trash," he said. "Told me I was weaponizing patriotism." I took the flag, ran my fingers over the stitching. It was old, worn, probably from his deployment, probably something that had once flown over a base or a fallen friend's casket. "Do you know how many people just gave up?" he asked, a voice trembling. "How many sold their homes because of her threats?" I didn't answer, because I knew the answer. Too many. The next morning, I called an emergency town meeting at the community center. It was packed, standing room only. People who'd never spoken up before. Folks who'd been scared, shamed, and silenced. They filled the seats in rows, arms crossed, eyes wide. I stood at the front with a single easel board behind me. No PowerPoint, no podium. Just me, my badge, and the truth. Karen wasn't the disease. I said she was the symptom. A murmur rolled through the room. She filled a vacuum, a space we left empty because we stopped trusting each other, because we stopped showing up. That ends now. Then I started handing out documents, real county records proving the HOA didn't exist, and instructions for how every resident could file to nullify Karen's fraudulent liens. It was the first time in 2 years that place felt like a community again. But there was one more hill to climb: the civil case. Because while the GBI and state prosecutor were handling the criminal charges, I knew we had to do more. People had lost money. Some had lost homes. Kids were pulled out of schools. Retirees were forced to refinance their mortgages. That wasn't just criminal, it was theft of time, peace, and dignity. So we filed, on behalf of the entire neighborhood. I helped organize a class action civil suit. Josie linked us with a pro bono legal team out of Atlanta, veterans who specialized in community fraud. They didn't just want restitution, they wanted reform. We demanded immediate freeze of Karen's accounts, public notice of all fake lien removals, permanent injunction against any future HOA-like group without county registration, a statewide audit of all unregistered neighborhood associations. And for the first time ever, the county board, previously silent on Karen's antics, agreed unanimously, even the ones she used to have in her pocket. A week later, the state attorney general held a press conference. I stood beside him on the steps of the Capitol building, Josie just behind us, arms crossed, stoic as ever. "This case," he said, "is not just about fraud. It's about trust, about the abuse of neighborly goodwill, and it's about the strength of a community that refused to stay silent." He looked at me, and it started with one man who didn't just wear a badge, he honored it. My throat tightened, not for the praise, but for every face I saw in the crowd. Ty, Martha, the teacher Karen fined for having too many seasonal decorations, the elderly couple forced to repaint their shutters 3 times. They weren't victims anymore. They were citizens standing tall. That night, we had a bonfire at my ranch. No speeches, no politics, just music, food, and a whole lot of people who'd finally come together again. Karen was in jail awaiting trial. The fake law firm dissolved. The 3 fake cops all flipped and turned state's evidence. And our community. It wasn't perfect, but it was healing. As the fire crackled and kids roasted marshmallows, Ty came up beside me and handed me that flag again. "You keep it," he said. "It's safe with you." It felt surreal to watch her walk into that courtroom. Karen Lancaster, once the queen of cul-de-sacs and color-coded mailboxes, now wore a tan jumpsuit with Jackson County Jail printed in block letters across the back. Her hair was tied up in a limp bun, her face pale without makeup, her lips tight with bitterness. But she still had that look in her eyes, the look of someone who thinks they're smarter than the system. She didn't know the system was watching back. Courtroom 3B was packed that morning. Journalists lined the back rows. Neighbors filled the benches, some whispering, some glaring. The state's case against Karen had made national headlines by then, dubbed the Suburban RICO case, the first of its kind to use racketeering laws against a fake HOA enforcement scheme. I took my seat near the front, right behind the state prosecutor, Elena Rojas, a bulldog in heels. She didn't believe in theatrics. She believed in evidence, and she had mountains of it. Emails, wire transfers, witness statements, fake liens, surveillance footage, and the video, the one where Karen screamed, "Arrest him," at me as 3 men pretending to be deputies pulled guns on my porch. It played in the courtroom. You could hear the audience's collective breath catch. Karen didn't flinch, but her attorney did. Then came the witnesses. Ty went first. He wheeled up to the stand, placed his hand on the Bible, and told the court how Karen had called his wheelchair lift an eyesore and threatened him with eviction for non-compliance with elevation standards. Elena showed photos of the fake citation taped to his door. "How did it make you feel?" she asked. "Like I didn't belong," Ty said quietly. "Like serving my country counted for less than Karen's personal taste." Next came Martha from the county recorder's office, who testified how Karen had forged her signature on 5 documents to register the HOA. Then the mother of 2, fined $600 for letting her kids draw with chalk on the sidewalk. The teacher who'd been reported to child services because her Halloween decorations implied demonic influence. And the veteran's widow, who'd been told to remove her late husband's memorial garden. Each story heavier than the last. By the time Elena was done, the room felt suffocating. But then came the twist. On the 3rd day of trial, Josie Tran took the stand. Elena questioned her like clockwork about the audit, the paper trail, the shell companies. But then, just before ending her examination, she asked one final question. "Special Auditor Tran, were there any other individuals tied to this fraud operation?" Josie nodded. "Yes. One name came up on both internal memos and payment ledgers as a silent partner." She paused, looked directly at Karen. "The name is Councilman Robert DeWitt." The room exploded. Gasps. Shouts. Someone dropped their coffee. The judge banged his gavel 3 times. Karen turned to her attorney, whispering frantically, but it was too late, because the courtroom had just learned that one of the county's own elected officials, the same man who'd publicly praised Karen's neighborhood integrity initiatives, was part of the scam. Councilman DeWitt had been Karen's secret enabler. He helped her draft legal-looking notices. He'd stalled real HOA registration attempts from other neighborhood groups to eliminate competition, and he got a cut. Josie found transfers totaling $42,000 to a consulting business tied to his wife's name, all disguised as zoning consultation fees. Now the courtroom wasn't just judging Karen. It was watching an entire power structure fall. Outside, The protest signs started going up. Justice for the real homeowners. Karen isn't the only one guilty. Clean house in City Hall. Elena moved fast. She filed a motion to expand the case into a joint conspiracy indictment. Karen's defense team panicked. They filed to separate her charges, claiming she was manipulated by DeWitt and did not understand the full legal implications of her actions. But no one was buying it, not after the video, the emails, the money trail, especially not after Josie revealed Karen's plan to franchise the fraud across 5 counties. The plan had a name, CARE, Community Accountability and Residential Enforcement. Karen had written it herself. 42 pages, fonts, logos, slogans. She called it a revolutionary model in suburban governance. It read like a manifesto, and in the margins, Councilman DeWitt's handwritten notes. They were planning a racket disguised as civic leadership. I left the courtroom that afternoon and walked into a wall of cameras. I wasn't there to talk, but people wanted to hear something, anything. So I stepped up to the mic and spoke. I don't wear this badge because I love power. I wear it because I believe in service. And service means standing between people like Karen and the people they think they can intimidate. Then I looked straight at the lens. To every community out there wondering if what's happening in Jackson County is happening to them, ask questions, read your deeds, know your laws, and never ever let a fake authority steal your real voice. That night, something shifted online. People across the country started using the hashtag #WaukesherHoJustice and sharing their stories. One woman in Texas posted a video crying in her car after being fined $900 for planting native flowers. A vet in Ohio shared footage of a local HOA removing his front yard flagpole. A single mom in Colorado showed a $1 or $200 curb appeal violation for having her laundry visible from her balcony. The Karen story had become a spark, and the fire was spreading. But Karen was still Karen. Even after 4 days of brutal testimony, public outrage, and damning evidence, she sat in that courtroom with her chin up, whispering to her lawyer, trying to control the narrative. Until the 5th day, that's when the judge allowed the victims to give personal statements. One by one, they stood and faced her. I lost my home because of you. You mocked my disability. You made my child afraid to ride her bike. You called my husband a public embarrassment before his funeral. And finally, Ty stood again. This isn't about HOA rules, he said. It's about cruelty. The kind that hides behind clipboards and fake uniforms. But you forgot something. Karen, you live in a town that doesn't forget its own. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't hold back. I've served in combat zones. I told the court, and I've seen tyranny, but never did I think I'd see it wearing a pantsuit and calling itself community enforcement. I looked at Karen. You tried to criminalize peace, weaponize kindness, and you failed, because this community rose up. She didn't meet my eyes, not once. The gavel dropped like thunder. All rise. Judge Henderson's voice echoed off the walls of courtroom 3B, but it didn't need to. Everyone was already on their feet. You could feel the tension hanging in the air like static before a lightning strike. Karen Lancaster stood at the defendant's table, her face pale, jaw locked, eyes fixed on some invisible spot on the floor. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Ty, or Martha, or the dozens of neighbors she'd humiliated. She didn't look at anyone. Maybe she knew what was coming. The clerk read the verdicts one by one. Count 1, criminal impersonation of law enforcement, guilty. Count 2, filing fraudulent liens for financial gain, guilty. Count 3, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, guilty. Count 4, elder abuse and coercion, guilty. Count 5, racketeering under Georgia RICO statutes, guilty. Each word landed like a hammer blow. Karen swayed slightly but didn't speak. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder. She didn't shrug it off. Then came the sentence. Judge Henderson removed his glasses and leaned forward, voice low but clear. Ms. Lancaster, you abused your neighbor's trust, falsified legal authority, exploited the vulnerable, and attempted to weaponize fear in the name of community enforcement. Sakitori, you are hereby sentenced to 17 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for 10 and a restitution order totaling $428,000 to be divided among your victims. A murmur swept through the courtroom. One woman sobbed. Someone clapped before being shushed. Karen didn't cry, but something in her cracked. I saw it. The HOA queen was gone. All that remained was a woman who thought power made her untouchable until the people she tried to control reminded her where real strength lives. The aftermath wasn't quiet. 3 more arrests followed in the next month. Councilman DeWitt for conspiracy and misuse of public office. The fake lawyer Bernard Wilkins for multi-state fraud, and a former HOA treasurer from another county who tried to copy Karen's model. The ripple effect didn't stop at the state line. News stations in Texas, Florida, and Arizona began investigating similar cases. The Georgia House of Representatives passed a bill requiring public HOA registration and third-party oversight for any enforcement action affecting property. They called it the Neighborhood Transparency Act, and it started with us, with a ranch, a fake citation, and a sheriff who wouldn't back down. As for Jackson County, we started rebuilding. Martha got promoted to deputy clerk, tasked with educating homeowners on their rights. Ty started a nonprofit called Lifted Voices, helping disabled veterans fight HOA harassment and housing discrimination. He asked me to be on the board. I said yes. Josie got a commendation from the governor. She deserved it 10 times over. And me, I stayed sheriff. But I didn't just patrol the roads anymore. I started showing up to community barbecues, school plays, zoning meetings, not in uniform, just as Cole, because trust isn't built by a badge, it's built by being there. One night, a few months after the trial, we had a block party at the community center. Kids running around with face paint, folks grilling burgers, music playing low. Ty wheeled up beside me with a beer in hand. You know what you started, right? He said. I just did my job. No, he replied in smiling. You reminded people that a neighborhood isn't lines on a map. It's who shows up when someone needs help. He looked out at the crowd laughing, dancing, free. She took our dignity. You helped us take it back. Before the night ended, a little girl came up to me, maybe 9, red pigtails, face covered in ice cream. She tugged my sleeve. Sheriff Merritt. Yeah, sweetheart. She pointed at the ribbon pinned to my vest. Are you the one who stopped the mean lady from yelling at Mr. Ty? I knelt beside her. A lot of us did. Honey. Together, she grinned. Good. My mom says you're like a cowboy with a badge. I laughed. That's not far off. She nodded, satisfied, and ran back into the crowd. And in that moment, under string lights and the hum of summer, I realized something. Justice isn't a courtroom. It's a community that refuses to be quiet. Karen thought power came from controlling others, from paperwork, fines, and fear. But real power is people. Neighbors locking arms when one is pushed, a vet standing tall with nothing but truth, a widow refusing to back down. Karen used fake cops to enforce fake laws. But this county had the real ones, and the real ones don't serve fear. We serve justice. Call to action. If you've ever felt powerless against fake authority, against injustice hiding in plain sight, don't stay silent. Ask questions. File the paperwork. Gather your neighbors. Speak truth, even when your voice shakes. Because sometimes the person who looks like just a neighbor is the very one who'll bring the whole house of cards down. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Have you seen this kind of abuse of power in your own community? Comment below and share your thoughts on HOA justice. Let your story be heard.